Hello, this is Jonathan with Steel Bear Academy. Today we're going to have quite a different video than lots of my other videos. This one's not going to be focused so much towards somebody who's brand new to guns. Instead, this is going to be focused on those of us who are already into guns and who have already been in the gun world for a little while. This is addressed to us, meaning myself included, but to anyone else who is interested in guns. You know, something that comes up a lot is we have this passion for guns and self-defense, and it all makes sense to us. However, how do we help bring more people into the gun world? Because unfortunately, guns are a highly politicized issue, I guess if you call it that, a highly politicized item, belief system, whatever you want to call it. And in order for us to continue having our gun rights, we have to make sure that we are doing a good job in helping spread awareness and understanding of our own beliefs about guns. So this video is going to be about how to persuade someone who is anti-gun to becoming pro-gun. Now that might seem like quite a big job. It might seem like it's undoable in one video, and it will be. This is not going to be a one-part video. This is going to be a series of videos explaining how to go about persuading someone of anything, really. But this is going to be focused on guns because that is what we are interested in this moment, for me at least. So I'm going to teach you my tips and tricks for how I have gone about convincing other people and persuading them. So this is going to be part one. So the first thing you want to think about is you want to think about the whole job of persuasion. What exactly does that mean? So I like to differentiate between debate and persuasion. Debate is where you have two sides, typically represented by two different people, you know, like a high school debate, for example. One side is trying to present their arguments to the other side, and the other side is doing the same. And they are allowed to criticize each other's opinions, and they are more so trying to win a contest. It's more like a contest than it is really about convincing the person across the table. It's really more for the benefit of the audience. The audience is really the one who is listening to this back and forth and trying to figure out which side do I agree with, which side has done a better job of presenting their argument, and that is debate. So that's my definition of debate. Yours might be different. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about persuasion. So persuasion is where it can take on many forms, but persuasion is the art of having somebody perhaps opposed to you. Not necessarily, it doesn't always have to be that way, but convincing somebody to believe your side or take your point of view. And persuasion, there's a word that goes along with it. It's called rhetoric. So rhetoric, R-H-E-T-O-R-I-C. And rhetoric means the art of persuasion. So this word is closely tied to this guy named Aristotle, who was an old Greek guy. He's really famous, and he came up with a bunch of stuff. And one of the things he came up with was categorizing or coming up with a name for rhetoric, the art of persuasion. And he came up with three different categories of forces that persuade somebody. And you have to have all three of them in various amounts in order for you to persuade someone. So we're going to focus on the first one that I think is the most important for any of us, and it's probably the area that most gun owners fall short of by far, and that is ethos. So there's three appeals. There's ethos, logos, and pathos. And those all have roots in, I'm guessing Greek. Those are Greek-rooted words, perhaps Latin, not sure. Ethos is the first one. So ethos means your credibility as the speaker. And I might as well just go over quickly what the other ones are. Pathos is appeals to emotion, and logos is appeals to logic. So ethos, you might be tempted to think that it's related to ethics. They share a root word, but ethos is the credibility of the speaker. So that means me. If I'm the one trying to convince somebody, my credibility is what we're talking about here. What is credibility? Because a lot of people think that all I have to do is show the facts and that will convince somebody, that will persuade somebody. That is not true at all. And I would say it is rarely the case that all you have to do is show the facts and that will persuade somebody. Instead, it's a kind of a three-prong approach. We have ethos, logos, and pathos. Ethos is what we're talking about right now. So what does that mean? So ethos is how you present your argument. So there are lots of ways that you can lose ethos. You can lose credibility. Those words are not the same, but we'll use them interchangeably. There's lots of ways you can lose credibility. Probably the number one way is to lie. If you lie and the other person knows that you're lying or catches you in a lie, your credibility is pretty much gone. You will not be able to persuade them because they don't trust you. So ethos is all about trusting the speaker. If you don't trust me to tell you the truth, if you don't trust me as someone who you're listening to, meaning let's imagine that you're the one who's listening to me. If you don't trust me, you're not going to listen to me. So no matter how good my emotional appeals or my logic or the facts that I bring up, if you don't trust me, it's a pretty unlikely scenario that I'm going to persuade you, that I'm going to be rhetorically persuasive or rhetorically successful. It's just not going to happen. And it's kind of it's something we take for granted a lot. If you are somebody who tries to persuade somebody and they don't respond well to you, like you might be making all the good points, but they just don't listen to you, or they still will not listen to you, chances are that you're falling short in the ethos category. You're falling short in the credibility category. So number one is don't lie. If you're trying to convince somebody about guns, don't say things that are not true. Don't lie. Don't try to cover up facts. Don't try to do anything that would undermine your credibility. Guns are kind of a unique world to persuade people in, because generally the people who are already part of the gun world know a whole lot more about the whole topic than people outside of the gun world. Generally, people who are anti-gun tend to not know much about guns. And so there kind of creates a bit of a dynamic between the speaker and the audience, where the speaker is going to know a lot more, and they're going to have to kind of raise the knowledge level of the audience quite a bit in order to get them up to where you are, so that they can understand your arguments better. And so part of teaching in general is just making sure that you don't break your credibility. If they don't trust you, they won't listen to you, no matter how right you are. So that's number one, don't lie. Number two, don't do immature behaviors. So this is stuff like don't put down people, don't insult people. If you're talking to somebody, this is one way to do it that I'm going to show you that is a bad way to do it. So probably one of the most common ways is to say, like, well, those anti-gunners are so stupid, or those anti-gunners don't know what the hell they're talking about. When you say stuff like that, it just makes you look bad. It makes you seem like, why should I listen to this guy? He's not speaking professionally. He's not speaking kindly. It might seem silly, but some people just won't listen to somebody who's not kind. And for good reason. If you can't trust them to be respectful and kind through just a normal interaction, like me trying to convince somebody of something, why should they listen to you? If you're not able to be mature in something like this, why should they listen to you? That's the second point. Don't do immature behaviors. Don't talk bad about people. No put downs. Don't accuse other people of being less smart than you. Even if you're the smartest person in the room, it very, very rarely helps you to act like other people are stupid. In terms of persuasion, it might make you feel good. It might make you feel like, I'm the smartest person in the room. but it's going to make you look like an idiot to everybody else, and nobody's going to like you, even if you were the smartest person. So don't do things that are immature. Number 3, don't commit logical fallacies. So logical fallacies are a whole other collection of things, but you've probably heard of a couple of them already. Number 1 is don't make any ad hominem remarks. So ad hominem, those are 2 words. Ad hominem basically means trying to attack making personal attacks against the opposition to try to advance your point. So that would be stuff like, well, don't listen to that guy, he's an idiot. Don't listen to whoever, they just don't know what they're talking about, or they're stupid, or things like that. It's not so much that you're arguing against what they're saying. Instead, you're making it personal. You're attacking who they are as a person. Now, that's a little different than attacking their credibility or their trustworthiness. That's slightly different. But even then, that will probably fall under immature behavior, so you probably shouldn't do that either. But don't make any logical fallacies. Another popular one is the slippery slope fallacy. The slippery slope fallacy is if you're trying to stop something over here from happening, like let's say this is event A. If you tell somebody, if event A happens, event B will happen. And if event B happens, then C, then D, then E, and all the way down here over here is Z, and Z is the end of the world. Z is a terrible bad thing. And so that's the slippery slope argument. Just because this first thing happens doesn't necessarily mean that those other things will happen. Now, sometimes just because something is logically fallacious, meaning it's not rooted in good logical practice, doesn't mean that it's untrue. Some things can still be untrue, or some things still can be true even though they're fallacious. For example, if I say that person doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, that could be. That's still an ad hominem attack, but they very well may not know what the hell they're talking about. But it's still not a logical, it doesn't hold up to logical scrutiny, let's say. So the slippery slope argument is a very popular one. If we get rid of the guns, then, everything's going to go downhill and we'll have World War III. There's lots and lots of steps along the way that have to happen for World War III to happen. And just because you get rid of the guns doesn't mean that that's going to happen necessarily. This is a tough one because this is a lot of pro-gun arguments. Don't let this bad thing happen because then other bad things will happen beyond it. So just be very careful of that one. However, there is even a logical fallacy of accusing somebody that just because you made a logical fallacy that it's not true. As I said before, just because something is a logical fallacy does not mean that the underlying message or the underlying assertion was not true. So, for example, even in a slippery slope argument, you might say, this thing is bad, so let's not have it happen because this bad thing might happen down here. That could happen, but the whole slippery slope, once you start sliding down the hill, everything slides with it, and it gets down to the bottom. That can be logically fallacious, but it can also be true. So be mindful of that. Don't be the person who incorrectly thinks that just because, I caught you in a logical fallacy, does not mean that it's not true. There can be something that is true even though it is asserted illogically or asserted fallaciously. So be mindful of that. Number 4, and this is probably the biggest one. Whenever you're talking to someone, trying to persuade someone, you need to make sure that you keep calm, respectful, and you need to be supportive of them, meaning the audience. You're kind of taking on a teacher role. You're trying to be calm, you're trying to respect them as a person, which you should do anyway, but people don't do that sometimes. So you want to be respectful of them. You want to be supportive of them. You want to show them, meaning you, the audience, that I am somebody who wants the best for you. And that's part of building your credibility. That's part of building ethos. People trust and will listen to people who they think have the best intentions for them, who have the best thing in mind for them. If you are somebody who doesn't seem like they have the best intentions for somebody, people are not going to listen to you. So there are ways to be supportive of somebody. We'll talk about those. You also want to, because we are somebody who already knows quite a bit about guns, we're going to be kind of the authority on the subject. And authority, I use that word in the sense of you're going to be the more knowledgeable one, probably. You're probably going to be more interested in this stuff. You're probably going to have delved deeper into learning the ins and outs of the facts, the ins and outs of the evidence. And you're probably going to be the one who's going to educate these people about it. You're also going to probably know a lot more about the objects themselves. So you're going to probably have a lot of guns, or at least several guns, maybe even just one gun. Maybe you don't even have guns and you just know a lot more about them. You're going to be the one who's going to be explaining little differences. If somebody makes a incorrect statement, you'll want to be, if you have enough credibility, they will be able to hear you tell them the truth. So for example, if they're talking about revolvers or something, and they say, man, that guy, that gun shouldn't have such a big magazine. Well, a revolver does not have a magazine. It has a cylinder with chambers. So that is something where you can correct somebody, but you want to make sure you do it in a respectful way. You want to say, well, actually, a revolver doesn't have a magazine. A magazine is typically for it's for an auto-loading gun, typically. And a revolver does not have one of those. It just doesn't. Instead, a revolver has a revolving cylinder. This gun's unloaded, by the way. I figure you don't need to worry about that. You're behind the camera, but just here for visual interest. So you're probably going to be the authority. You want to make sure that you explain things in a respectful way. Don't tell them they're stupid for not knowing something. If they think that a revolver has a magazine because that's all they know, just explain it to them. You're going to increase your credibility by, one, being knowledgeable about it, and two, you're going to increase your credibility by respectfully educating them. So this is very important. How do you go about gaining ethos, gaining credibility as a persuasive effort? Probably the best way to go about doing that, if you can do it tactfully and you can do it well. The way I do it is usually I go about asking lots of questions. So in my mind, I have kind of a goal of where I want to get to. And this goal is almost always centered on self-defense. Self-defense, I think, is the most digestible, easiest way to get somebody from being anti-gun to being pro-gun. So you want to start off by asking questions to this person, to your audience, in a curious and non-judgmental manner, non-judgmental way. So what I mean by that is, when I ask a question, I'm not asking it in a way that connotes, meaning the other person feels that I'm asking it in a judgmental or a way that is just trying to bait them into saying something wrong. I am legitimately curious to hear what their experiences are so that I can help them in showing them what my point of view is. It's not about me jamming my point of view down their throat. It's about, I know a lot about this stuff, and they probably don't, and they are at least hopefully willing to listen to me if I've got enough credibility. So something I might ask them, I'll show you kind of how I would ask it, and then I'll show you how a lot of people ask it incorrectly, badly, I should say. So if I'm going to go down the path of using self-defense as my ultimate goal of showing them the need for having a gun, let's say, and I'm going to go into this later on about my actual game plan of how to get there. But these are kinds of questions that I might ask you. I'm going to ask stuff like, Have you ever felt unsafe at your home? Have you ever called the police? What happened when you did call the police? How long did they take to show up? So those are questions that are, hopefully it comes across in my tone that I'm not asking them because I'm trying to bait them into an answer. I am legitimately asking them because I don't know what their experience is, and I want to know what they are basing their opinions on. If they are going to talk about a really bad experience, then I want to at least have asked it in a neutral way so that they can explain it to me and tell me about it, and I can listen to it and hear it. Listening is a very, very important part of gaining credibility as a speaker. If the other person doesn't feel like you're listening to them, your credibility is going to go plummet because they're going to think, they don't care about me. Why should I listen to them? Why should I care about what they have to say? So these are all things that go into ethos. And credibility is something that is built over time. And if people always talk about like, you have one chance to make a good first impression. And if you mess up that first impression, you'll never get that chance again. People make up their minds in the first second or two of meeting you. You can make a huge impact in somebody's life if you convince them and show them and persuade them to go from being anti-gun to being pro-gun. And it might be very tempting for you to act the way you want to act all the time, regardless of whether or not somebody believes in your particular point of view, particularly about guns. In California, for example, it is very, very common to run across somebody who is anti-gun. And as somebody who is very pro-gun, it's important for me to establish my credibility right at the very moment I meet them, right at the very moment they see me, the first words that come out of my mouth, the intentions that I show, the warmth and kindness that I show. All those things contribute to how much I'm going to be able to convince them, persuade them, whether they will seek me out for training. I have often been the person who people say, like, I was anti-gun, but I talked to Jonathan, and I am somebody who I trusted him, and I trusted him to explain to me how I was, why he believes the things he believes. And they often say, maybe I'm not pro-gun yet, but I definitely want to learn more. And if you can get somebody from being anti-gun to even just, I want to learn more, man, you have persuaded somebody, you have succeeded in moving them toward that pro-gun pendulum. You also want to keep in mind that not everybody can be convinced, and not everybody can be convinced by you or by me. There are some people that even if I do everything the best I can do, some people will still not be convinced, and that's not something necessarily that I did wrong or they did right or anything like that. Sometimes people just need a certain person to persuade them, to get them moving along that path. And maybe it's not me. Probably a common example for this is if you need the person who teaches you to look like you or be the same sex as you or be the same age as you or have the same life experience as you, and I don't match that, you might not be able to, no matter what I do, your requirements for what is credibility of a speaker will never exist in me. And so you will never trust me, and you'll never be able to listen to what I have to say. Maybe something will change in you at some point where you can, but very well may not. And even if I just meet you at that moment in your life where you can't listen to me because of, my skin color, my sex, I'm male, my age, I'm 29. If you need the person who's going to convince you to be something else, I'm just not going to match it, and that's okay. don't think that just because you're not able to get them from anti-gun to pro-gun doesn't mean that you shouldn't be a good stepping stone along the way, because you might be the stepping stone for someone later on to get them, to get that needle moving, to get them closer and closer to pro-gun. So this is part 1. This is ethos. Next, we're going to cover pathos in the next video. So stick around. Hope this is helpful for you. If you have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below. This topic is about ethos. Maybe talk about how you go about, what's your strategy for raising your credibility with people. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.